You're listening to Art Affairs, episode 94. Today I'll be talking to Youngji Cha. Alright, so my name is Michael Faith, and this is Art Affairs. Art Affairs is my attempt at shining a spotlight on the many wonderful people that make up this amazing art community, featuring conversations with artists, gallerists, curators, telling their stories. You can dig through previous episodes, complete with show notes, at artaffairs.podcast.com, but the best way to stay plugged in is to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. And if you're really enjoying the show and want to help support what I'm doing here in an even bigger way, check out the Art Affairs Patreon. Not only does it give you an opportunity to help keep the show going, but there are several community-oriented benefits as well, like getting early access to episodes and suggesting questions for upcoming guests. You can find all the information about that at patreon.com/artaffairs. You can also connect with the show on Instagram at Art Affairs Podcast. All right, so today's guest is artist Youngji Cha. Youngji creates beautifully colorful paintings rich in lore with a strong folktale aesthetic. In my conversation with her, we talk about her multicultural background, growing up in both South Korea and California, how she broke into the animation industry working as a visual development artist, the dual nature of her career now, splitting time between visual development and her personal art practice, and a whole lot more. So I hope you enjoy my conversation with Youngji Cha. Youngji, welcome to the show. It's so good to have you on.
Thank you for having me. Very excited.
Awesome. And so I usually like to dive into people's background a little bit before we talk specifically about your career. And I know that you were born and grew up in Seoul, South Korea, before coming to the States. And while I've never been there myself, from what I understand, it's like a huge metropolis with like 10 million people. I did a little bit of like Googling just to find out about the city a little bit more. And I know that there's like close to 10 million people, extremely high tech, it seems. But what was like the area like specifically where you grew up? Was it like in the heart of the city or was it more on the outside?
I guess it was towards the heart of the city, but it wasn't as busy as like what you might see on Google Image. It was more like a suburb vibe with a lot of apartments. But I think when I grew up, it wasn't as high tech as it is now. Like Korea is like changing so fast every year.
Awesome. And what kind of work did your parents do? Anything like artistic themselves?
My mom was kindergarten teacher in Korea and my dad was architect. Yeah, they were very good at drawing. Like they weren't artists per se, but like my mom, she was in charge of like decorating whenever they had a big event at school. And all other teachers will come to her classroom and like copy what she did. Nice. And like she will make like a format and all that stuff. So yeah, they were very artistic.
Awesome. And with an architect too, I mean, that takes a level of skill. I mean, maybe not able to express like the creative muscle as much, but still a lot of skill, especially for like drafting
Yes.
diagrams and stuff, right?
Yeah. When we immigrated to America, my parents bought like everything. They packed literally everything. And when I opened up my dad's box, it was just full of those like high-tech rulers that architects use. And it's still at home. We don't know what to do with it, but it's at home.
That's awesome. And so did they give you much exposure to like the art side of things? Like, is it something you feel like you had around you much when you were growing up?
I think even before I was old enough to go to kindergarten, I would follow my mom to school. And I think just seeing that like was very influential for me.
Okay. Awesome. So like, is that what kind of prompted your own interest in creating art? Is that what sparked your, I guess, creativity, or was it something else?
I think So to prep for the interview, I really thought about that yesterday. I was like, what really inspired me to go to this route? And I think for me it was a movie, animation. When I was a kid, my dad would always take me to the video shop to rent videos. And I just happened to watch The Nightmare Before Christmas by Tim Burton. And it kind of blew my mind as a kid. It was amazing, and it was like nothing that I experienced before. There was no other animation like that in Korea, and just the fact that the stop motion of like puppets moving and all the story element was like, it blew my mind. And I liked this so much that every time we go to a video store, I would rent that over and over again.
Nice.
To the point where the owner was like, hey, we got 2 copies. Why don't you just buy one for your daughter?
Well, you might as well own it at this point.
Yeah. He was like, you already pretty much paid for it. So, yeah. So that was kind of beginning of my inspirational spark. And, when I was in middle school, I saw Spirit Away for the first time, and like that whole Miyazaki world opened up, and that was another thing for me. So yeah, I think film was really big influence on me.
So that makes a lot of sense. And I guess did that lead to you becoming like really serious about art, or was it something that you did more as a hobby and you were maybe wanting to be something else? Like when people asked you, what do you want to be when you grow up? Was it artist, or was it like doctor, or, you know?
It was artist.
Okay.
I think I really didn't see myself doing anything else. I was not good at anything else. I really enjoyed painting and drawing more than anything. And my parents were always super supportive. So I think it naturally just took that path.
Nice. And at what point, you mentioned, you know, migrating to the U.S., at what point did that happen? Like what motivated their move to the U.S.?
I think my parents really didn't want us to, I have an older brother, and didn't want us to go through that school system in Korea. Yeah, it's really strict. Senior year, everybody takes a test to go to college. And if you miss that test, you have to wait a year. It's just so much pressure for students. And it's still like that. So they wanted more like free environment for us to study. And that made them move to America.
And where did you end up initially? Was it somewhere in California, or like you're in LA now, but is that where you guys moved originally?
Yeah, we moved to San Francisco.
Oh, okay.
I have an aunt there. Yeah, and she helped us move, and we stayed with her for a bit, and yeah, that's how we started off.
Nice. And what was that transition like? Just, you know, acclimating to a whole new culture.
In the beginning, it was great because I didn't have to go to school right away. And I have a cousin who's same age as me, and she had to go to school, and I stayed home, and she hated me. And my aunt and uncle would take me to beach, to park. It was amazing.
Nice.
Until I went to school. I guess it was so hard for me to adjust in the beginning. It was no easy way around it. I was extremely shy kid. So that did not help either. But when I started, school, the principal actually moved the students around. So there was 2 Korean students my age at the school, and he put them in my class. So I'll have a friend and help, which was extremely thoughtful. And one of the friends is still my best friend today.
Nice.
So yeah,
that's awesome.
She really helped me a lot.
Very cool. And so, like, do you still have family in Korea? Like, do you go back to visit regularly?
I have a lot of aunt and uncle, and my grandma still in Korea.
Okay. And so, like, after making that transition and kind of settling into your new home, I guess, how did that affect your interest in art? Did it change like your interest in art at all? Was there do you feel like you were more supported in the school system in the US versus Korea, or less supported? Like, how did that impact your direction?
I think it like my love for art became almost like, how do I describe it? Like part of me at that point, because I couldn't really talk in English, so that visual language became like really strong part of me. And yeah, I think it got even bigger. It became a bigger part of me.
Oh, very cool. And I guess, and just thinking about like what the experience of moving homes would be like, is like you have an opportunity to redefine your identity. Like, it's now your choice. Like, what is the person I want to be and portray to the world? And if you had already kind of started down that path of becoming an artist, you could just totally lean into it and say, I'm the artist, you know?
Yeah. But I think I was too young to even think like that. I was just like, I feel so awkward, you know, like I feel like I don't have any friends. I think that was the main problem that I had at that age. But now if I move to another country, maybe it'll be different.
Yeah. So I know you went to art school, but I couldn't find anywhere online that mentioned where you went. Was it somewhere in like the San Francisco area?
Yeah, I went to Academy of Art University in San Francisco.
Okay. And why there specifically? Like, what led you to that school of all the choices that you had?
I applied to a couple different schools, but I think the main thing was the tuition. Yeah, I really wanted to go to Art Center, but Art Center tuition was way too high for my family budget. And I commuted from home when I went to AAU, so that also helped save money.
Awesome. And from what I understand, you started in a fine art program, focusing on painting, but then ultimately pivoted to focus on, visual development instead. So tell me about that. Like, what was your original aim, to become a gallery artist? And then you kind of changed your mind and wanted to go a different route?
I feel like I went back and forth actually. So like I mentioned, Nightmare Before Christmas was such a big inspiration for me that I wanted to work in stop motion. So I told my mom, like I had no idea how to become a stop motion artist. So I just thought, okay, I'm going to do sculpting. Because I figured you do sculpting and somehow you'll be able to go work at, I don't know. That was my logic back then. But my mom was like, oh, sculpting is really, really hard. Why don't you try painting first? And she put me on a painting class in high school, which is amazing because we weren't that comfortable financially, like my family, and that class was really expensive, but she really put me into that class to figure out where I want to go. And it was very helpful because I fell in love with painting, and that kind of made me decide to major in fine art painting. I figured if I know how to paint a little bit, I can get somewhere at the end. Cross my fingers. And yeah, that's why I did my undergrad in painting, and my focus was landscape.
Okay. And then so what motivated, I guess, the pivot to visual development? And what is visual development? Is that like another name for like illustration, or what is?
It's kind of like concept design for animation.
Okay.
Yeah. So towards the end of my college year, I was like, okay, I'm ready to I'm about to graduate. I have my painting portfolio, but what do I really want? Like, do I really want to be a full-time painter? And after I graduated, I took a little bit of time off to think about, whole future and where I'm gonna go. And I guess at the end, my love for animation and for film really like came back, and I was like, I can paint on the side, but maybe while I still have a chance, I should try to pursue the route that I originally wanted to go. So I went back to school for visual development. Yeah.
Okay. And so you got your bachelor's in fine art and then went back to school for like a graduate program?
Mm-hmm. I never finished. I think I have like 2 classes left.
Okay.
So I can't say that I have a degree.
Nice.
Yeah, but I did. And after the fine art program, in the graduate program is where I learned how to use like Photoshop and digital paint.
Okay. I mean, it makes a lot of sense because like that was your original passion, and like the thing that really got you excited about art was animation. So like for you to kind of evaluate what your direction should be and like recenter yourself, I think that makes a lot of sense. So like what, from what I understand, after graduating, you jumped right into the early part of your animation career. I think I read that you were like doing background painting initially. So like what does that work like, and what kind of work were you doing right out of college?
It took me a while, like to find a job after I didn't finish graduate program, but after I said, okay, I'm done, I'm gonna start looking for work. But I got really lucky while I was in the graduate program. I got an opportunity to intern at this small animation studio called Tonko House in Berkeley. And that's actually, I feel like, where my animation career started off. And after that, I couldn't find a job for another year. It was a long battle of finding work. But I think a lot of students probably goes through the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not easy.
So what was how did you connect with the folks at Tonko House and start working there?
It was through school. Yeah.
Okay.
One of the art director from Tonko House, Mike Dutton, he came to see the senior show. We call it Spring Show. And he really liked my portfolio, and yeah.
Awesome. And so did you enjoy that experience? Because it's like, it finally was, you and working in the environment and atmosphere that you kind of wanted to be in. Like, do you feel that was a valuable time in your own like growth as an artist?
Such a big, valuable time. I learned so much. And just things that you can't learn from school. I think that's why internship program is so valuable, that you get to go, to actual company and learn about the pipeline and all that stuff. And work with the artists that you admired. It was an amazing experience.
Awesome. And so while you were doing work there and just starting to kind of get your feet into the animation industry, were you still also taking the time to work on your personal artwork? Even if it was kind of, no, you just you were putting all of your energy into animation?
Yeah, I couldn't even think about painting at the time. I was just so focused on making portfolio for visual development, and my goal was to get into the industry. So I did not paint like traditional. Well, I did a plein air here and there, but I didn't really do my own painting that time. Yeah.
So how did that change? How did you eventually start to, I guess, give some of your energy to your personal art practice? So
it was during pandemic. So Think Space Gallery, Andrew and Sean, they did a contest during pandemic, and it was to draw their cat.
Right.
Yeah, and I submitted mine, and I forget if it was a second place or third place. Bunch of artists won to be on a group show, and my submission for the contest was digital sketch or painting, but for the gallery I had to paint traditionally And
Sure.
I bought a pedal and I was just like staring at it. I don't think Andrew knows this story, but yeah, I was just like staring at the pedal because I had no idea what to paint. Like I never, like when I was in school, I painted very traditional subjects like still life, landscape, seascape, cityscape. So I didn't really do my personal painting before. So it was a big challenge. And
Wow.
yeah, one day I was just like, I kind of like, gave up. I kind of gave up and I was like, you know what? It is what it is. And I started sketching and it kind of naturally came out, which is really weird, but yeah.
That's amazing. And so like, first of all, it's incredible because I remember that contest and I remember the like early days of the pandemic and how Andrew was kind of approaching that, trying to bring everybody, trying not to let everybody get too depressed. Yeah. So he was having all these fun contests and trying to get the community involved in all of this stuff. So it's cool to hear like that was the kind of starting point for you to embrace or kind of revisit your roots as a painter. So as that started to develop more and you started to give more of your energy to your personal art, was it hard to balance those two with your day job work and your personal work?
It was in the beginning, but I think it helps both of my world because my day job as a visual development artist, I'm working for it's a group project, right? I love it, but there is still limit to my creativeness, right? Because it's like I can't just do my own painting. It's for a film. Right. It's a pipeline. So when I come home, the canvas is like my own world. I can do whatever I want, and that freedom was really nice after work. So that balance helped both sides of animation and personal painting.
Interesting. Yeah, tell me a little bit more about that. Like, are there aspects of the work that you do on an animation project that have informed the artwork that you make in your personal work, and vice versa? Are there aspects of the work that you do in your personal work that have bled into the stuff that you do for animation?
Let's see. I mean, the most thing will be, I think, draftsmanship. Cause when I work in animation, I'm always drawing and painting. So I'm constantly practicing almost, right? Always not practicing, but I'm always drawing and painting. And when I come home, I don't have to warm up. Like I can go straight to my painting. Also, like working with other artists on my animation side, it's so inspiring. And just talking with other artists and looking at their incredible work, it's very inspiring for me to create my own. So I think in that way, it also helps me with my personal work.
Interesting. And I mean, one thing that you just said made me think about the fact that, like, if I think about the time that I'm working, and so I work in software completely unrelated to art, but when I'm not working, I don't want to think about software at all. like I want to do this podcast or read or do other things, but like you're getting off of your day job and going and doing very similar things and continuing to paint. So like, it's like you literally have like two jobs. So like, when do you have time to do like fun things and things that you want to do, like just non-work related?
I think art is such a big part of me that sometimes it does, of course, it feels like work and I get very stressed and it's tiring.
Yeah.
So once in a while when I feel like that, like I don't paint for like a couple weeks. Like I give myself a break. But during that break, I'll go to a museum or like go watch a movie to just, to get that inspiration juice from other sources.
Well, that's cool. I mean, yeah, I guess what I'm thinking of is just work-life balance. And if, or in your case, work-life balance. And I guess if you think of, I mean, if you enjoy what you do, then it's not maybe so much work as just another side of your life, But also you have like, because your personal practice isn't solely responsible for funding your life, you have the ability to just stop that for a while if you wanted to, because you have the day job work to pay your bills, and there's not that added pressure to just keep grinding,
Yeah, and I'm very thankful for that, because if I wasn't depending on my main financial with my daytime job, and if I was just relying on my painting, I think it would have been much more stressful and not as fun. But almost right now, because I do have a full-time job and I paint after work, it feels more like it's definitely more relaxing, and when I see other artists, it's amazing how they can do it, because once your painting becomes your full job, you're almost like your own company. You have to deal with all this like other stuff that comes with it, and yeah, right now I'm very thankful, but also working a lot.
Right.
So there's that.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like you're enjoying it. So as long as you're continuing to enjoy it, then no harm there. You mentioned collaborating and working with other artists in the animation work that you do. I have to imagine there's a lot of people involved, a lot of wheels turning to make these animation projects work. Yeah. So like, how do you, I guess, how collaborative are the projects? Are you working directly with other creatives as part of the work that you do, or is it just you're working alongside them and you just see their work, but it doesn't necessarily integrate so much with your work?
So I think every my job as a visual development artist, we mostly we work with design and color. So when I say collaborative work, it's not that we're all working on like a same piece of art. It's more like we have our own assignments, but you get to see like other artists and how they approach their assignment and like their art. But once in a while, like things happen where like other artists would design something and it would come to me to color.
Okay.
Like when you work in 2D animation, the pipeline is very separated. So there's a designers and there's a color team. Designers will design the background and character, and it will get passed on to the color department, and color department will color. For movies, it's a little bit different. I think that's why the title visual development is more like concept art, because we do both. We do design and color.
Okay. And so like of those two types of work, is there one that you do more than the other? Are you doing more of the concept work or more of the 2D animation?
Right now, I'm working on a feature film, which is 3D. It's a 3D animation. So I do a little bit of both.
Okay. And so it is kind of like a pipeline, and where I'm like translating it to what I'm more familiar with, which is like comic book art, where there's a penciler, and then that pencil goes to an inker, and the inker does the inks, and then that goes to a colorist, and the colorist does the colors.
I think that's very close to 2D animation. 2D animation pipeline is very much like that. I guess for 3D, it's visual development, like design and color, and then it will go to modeling, and then it will go to animation. So yeah, it's a little bit different, but
Yeah, interesting. Are there similarities as far as like ideation and how you think about the work that you do on your animation work versus the work that you do for your personal work. Do you approach those in different ways? Like, are they different like skills that you have to use, muscles that you have to flex to do one versus the other? Or is it very similar in how you approach the two types of art?
I think it's similar in a way that I do a little bit of prep before I start my work. If I can give you an example, if I got an assignment at work, I'll do a lot of research on whatever that I'm designing or painting. I'll make a reference board, and I'll start with rough sketch. And same for when I do my own painting. I do a little bit of research and I do rough sketches on my sketchbook, and that's how I start. But I think the main difference would be thinking how this will fit in with all the story element, and like, even if my choice of design is like, my choice of design might not be the best choice because of the story and the whole, like, when you look at the movie as a whole, it might not be the best choice, right? So then I have to make adjustments and like notes, and I think about how it's gonna look as whole versus my painting. Now I'm thinking about what I want to do and how I want this to look at the end. So I think that's the main difference.
Okay. Interesting. And so, like, do you have, like, all the work that you've done in animation, is there a project that stands out to you as like the most memorable project? Like, oh man, that was my favorite project to work on.
Oh, that's such a hard question. So far, the projects that I worked on, they're very different. So my first job was as a background painter for 2D animation called Solar Opposites on Hulu, and that's adult animation. Like, it's has a Rick and Morty vibe.
Sure.
So that was it was such a big impact for me because, one, it was my first job in animation, and two, I learned so much about the pipeline that I didn't really learn in school, and the style was really challenging for me in the beginning. And after working there for a couple seasons, I got to work on movie. And my first movie was Trolls Band Together. And from adult animation jumping into Trolls, it was such a big, like, style jump and just different experience. So it's really hard for me to say which one's my favorite. And then after that, I worked on Kung Fu Panda 4, and that's another different style. And those Trolls and Kung Fu Panda, it's like something that I loved for a very long time. So it's really hard to choose.
Yeah, no, I get that. Are these all like coming, like, are you working for a particular studio and these projects are coming to the studio, or is this like freelance work where you have to, apply for a particular project? Right
now, I'm at DreamWorks Animation, and Troll, Kung Fu Panda 4, they're all from DreamWorks Animation.
Nice. So when did you make the move down to LA? Because I know we were talking earlier, you went to school in the Bay Area and you worked in Berkeley for a while. What motivated the move down to Los Angeles?
The first job.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it was 2018, 19. I think it might have like crossed, but yeah. I did an interview, and I'm really, really bad at interview. Like, I did a couple interviews with LA companies in LA, and I'm really, really bad at interviews. And I didn't get any of the jobs that I interviewed for.
Aww.
And I did a test with Solar, and after they liked my test, they sent me an offer letter. And I was like, they skipped the interview part, and I was like,
wow.
this is it. This is my chance.
That's amazing.
So I packed up, and I have far relative that I haven't talked in a really long time. And I asked my mom, I was like, Mom, can you like ask them if I can stay with them for a little bit? Because I don't even know where to go. And they were so nice, and they let me stay at their place. And I just packed up and
wow. That's amazing. And so then, like we talked earlier, in 2020, you kind of got hooked up with ThinkSpace and started showing your work. So like living in LA, had you been pretty active in the gallery community there? Like, were you going to openings and kind of participating in the larger, art community in the LA area?
I can't say I have been participating that much, but I do go to ThinkSpace opening. ThinkSpace is like home to me.
Yeah.
And I do go to openings here and there, but it's really excuse, but like full-time job and painting.
Well, yeah, no, I mean that's a fair excuse. I think that's a fair thing to say, because you're spending all of your time working on art. So,
but I really do want to get out more. Yeah, that's on my list to do.
List of things to do.
Yeah. My goal to get out more is
right on. Yeah, you and me both.
It's hard,
right? I mean, it's so comfortable at home, though, right? I mean, so let's talk about the work itself. And there's definitely a very kind of folktale aesthetic to it. So I'm kind of curious, like with your dual background, living in both Korea and the U.S., do you feel like there's a strong connection with one or the other? As far as like lore, like either Korean lore or fairy tales that you've experienced since living in the U.S. Like, what's the connection to folk tales and like folklore?
I think I have to go back to The Nightmare Before Christmas, but like I think whatever that I experienced when I was a kid, it left such a big imprint on me. I'm sure it's like that with a lot of people, but. So like all the folktale that I grew up hearing when I was in Korea, I think I always go back and reference that a lot. And culture-wise, I sometimes feel a little lost. Like, I feel like a lot of people like me who immigrated, we kind of feel like, I shouldn't say we. I shouldn't speak for everybody. Some of us, we feel like we're like stuck in the middle. Like, but also we get to experience two awesome cultures. So it's a little bit of both. And when I started painting, it just came naturally that I wanted to have that influence. Yeah, that's why I started. With a lot of characters wearing hanbok, which is the traditional Korean dress.
What role do the masks play? Is that also stemming from Korean culture?
We do have a lot of masks, and there's a lot of like traditional mask play where they did a whole play with instruments and stuff like that back in the day. But for me, I think I just like mask, like the face behind, and it's almost like you don't know what's going on inside when you have a mask on, and I think that was the main thing that led me to drawing all this masks.
It kind of presents a barrier almost, or like we were talking about earlier about identity, being able to define what your identity is. If you have a different identity presented in this mask form versus what's behind the mask, which leads to my next question: like, what is behind the mask? Do we know? Like, you can see glimpses in the mouth. There's usually an opening where you can kind of see, little faces peeking out. So, like, what is the story about these characters? Did they have a larger story and background?
So a lot of my paintings, I get inspiration by my fear and anxiety. So the subject matters are dark a lot of times, but I call my paintings my therapy painting because I try to basically create my dark world into more playful world to kind of balance and basically calm myself in a way, with this more playful imagery that I create. So a lot of times, like, we don't know, like, I don't really express the characters behind the mask, because it's kind of like the true feeling or the fear of the situation, and the mask will be kind of the top or the playful layer that I try to put on.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. So these are more stories about your own self and your own experiences?
Yeah. A lot of times it's just like random thoughts that I have, or I think it's mostly random thoughts. And just like day-to-day experience and things that, I would think about like something and it will lead me to think about, like, and sometimes it's just a scene that I want to paint. So it's a little bit different each time.
I love that idea of this being a form of therapy, because it, like, when you're taking something that's really hard, or difficult or challenge, like a source of anxiety, and turning it into something more whimsical and playful, it sort of defangs it. It removes the power from that difficult thing in a way,
Yeah.
And so I love that idea of it, taking this kind of dark thought and making it something more fun and playful.
I think that's why I love Tim Burton and Miyazaki's movies, because you see, like, if you watch their films, it's pretty dark. Like the under meaning or the subject matter might be really dark, but they show such beautiful and like imagery that you can digest that darkness, and I think I really like that.
Nice. Very cool. Is there a particular meaning around the larva? Because I know that's a common thematic in your work.
Yeah.
Do they represent something specific? It is a symbol for some like consistent theme?
So they're supposed to be maggots.
Oh, okay.
A lot of people ask, like, what is that worm? Yeah, it's supposed to be maggots. And I think I really don't like bugs. So that's another fear that I have. Try to put like a really cute,
right,
warm-like character, but they also kind of represent death and mourning and all that stuff. I think like the circle of life can be one of them, I guess, and the meaning kind of changes, depends on what I want the final image to look like. But yeah.
They are adorable though. They're so so cute. So hopefully like that's helped you get over the fear of bugs. I mean,
it's still going. I think I need to pay more.
Right. So you mentioned, as part of the animation work that you do, color is something that you have a lot of involvement in. So it's no surprise that you have an incredible use of color in your personal work. I love the colors that you use. So like, how do you approach color for the work that you do, for your personal practice? Is it something that you feel comes naturally to you, or is it something you really have to work on, like more focused?
In the beginning, I didn't really have a process for my painting. So I went in and I started painting, and that was really fun. But after like a couple paintings, it was getting too vague for me. Like I didn't like how I don't know how the end product is gonna look like. So I started doing color sketches. So I base off of that now. But a lot of times, because I do a lot of wash on my painting, it would change, and that's totally okay. But I just need a little bit of guidance. So I do color studies.
Interesting. So that's a good segue because I did want to kind of talk with you a little bit about your process. And you mentioned earlier that that you also do, in the same way that you do this for your animation work, you'll do sketches and stuff before you do a painting. So like, how do you generally approach developing an idea for a new piece? Do you have like a daily sketch routine, or like how do you do that brainstorming of, you know, developing that idea?
Sometimes I'll do doodle just to get my hand moving, and that will help me to get an idea. But I feel like a lot of times I think of a story like in my head, like, oh, what if like there's a girl going down the street and she falls, or like really random stories.
Yeah.
And that helps me to start sketching, and it will get me, I don't know, sometimes nowhere, but sometimes somewhere. And those usually become a painting.
Nice. Awesome. And so like from there, how do you then like develop the composition for the painting? Do you do sketches that are just more and more refined sketches, or do you kind of just jump right? I mean, you said earlier you used to just jump right into painting, but you don't really do that anymore. So like, what's your process now?
No, when I used to just jump in, I literally did a sketch on the panel, and that was getting way too messy. Like it was way too stressful. So I don't do that anymore. Yeah, I do more refined sketches on my sketchbook, but they're still very loose. It sometimes it doesn't look like anything to, you know, other people. Only I can tell what it is. From that point, if I find a sketch that I like, that I wanted to turn it into a painting, I'll take a picture and I'll scan it in, and I'll do really tight drawing on Photoshop, and I project my painting to a panel, and I get started.
Okay, interesting. And I guess at that point where you start painting, is everything as far as the composition goes pretty locked down and figured out, or does it still kind of evolve further as you paint?
It's pretty locked when I have my final drawing. Yeah, I usually stay with my final drawing. And the reason why I like to finish it in Photoshop is because there I move it around and I find the composition that I like. I usually know what size panel that I'm gonna go for, so I'll have that same ratio on my Photoshop, and I just move things around and find the composition that I like. And of course, when you start painting, like when you start seeing it with paint on panel, the composition might change a little bit. Like, oh, this character here doesn't feel right anymore. Then I'll like move it around. But I feel like that rarely happens.
And so, you know, acrylic is the main medium of choice that you use. You know, I guess what is it that you like about acrylic specifically, opposed to like oil or gouache or other types of paints?
I used to only paint in oil when I was in school. I love painting in oil. Such a forgiving medium because you can go back and, you know, it's still there. But I started painting acrylic because I live in an apartment in LA.
Right.
And I don't have like a separate studio space, and oil is, I couldn't do oil.
Yeah.
I did paint in acrylic when I was in high school. So I knew a little bit about acrylic, but I wasn't that comfortable with it. But I was kind of forced into using acrylic in the beginning. But when I was testing out my different techniques on my panel, I loved how it dries so fast that I can do layers. So completely different approach than how I used to paint with oil. And I really liked it. Like I loved doing thin layers and showing like the layers of color underneath. And yeah, now I love acrylic.
Awesome. Yeah, and you mentioned that the kind of the wash process that you do, which I think is a really distinctive element of your style, is you have really rich textures with these washes. So, like, how did you first discover that technique and make that such a central part of your style?
I've seen a lot of artists painting that has beautiful wash, and I always wanted to try it. Yeah, it wasn't like a happy accident. I wanted to copy other artists. I have no shame in saying I wanted to try, mimicking that texture and see, because I was so new to this medium because I never really fully painted with acrylics before. So I was trying a bunch of stuff. I was trying to copy different artists' technique, and I really liked wash because at certain point, with my painting, I always have a period where like it doesn't work. Like every painting for me, there's a time where it does not work. And that wash really helps set back and kind of restart.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And like, at the end, I put a little bit of more wash to give it a texture, but I think, especially in the beginning, it was kind of used as a reset button. It's like, no, it's not working. And I'll do a light wash and kind of try to build up again. No, it's not working. I do wash. Yeah.
How does the wash change it for you? Like, is it just literally washing away the image so that you can completely start over? Or is it the fact that the textures have now transformed the aesthetic in a way that you like now?
I think it's both. I love the texture of wash. But middle of my painting, when I do wash, it's really light. So all the image, all the color is still there, but they're just pushed back tiny bit. And, it kind of guides me on the direction that I want to finish the piece.
Okay. Are there other types of mediums that you've wanted to explore that maybe you haven't had an opportunity to?
I've been wanted to sculpt a little bit.
Oh, back to sculpture. So like, that was your original, like you said, early college. Yeah.
Yeah. I wanna sculpt one of the characters in my painting, and I always loved sculpting. I took sculpting classes when I was in college, and I really enjoy them. So maybe I can.
It's a full circle. I mean, at some point, we're going to get a full stop motion animation from your characters.
That would be awesome, but that sounds very expensive.
Right. Awesome. So switching gears a little bit, and before we talk about kind of what you have coming up, I wanted to chat with you a little bit about the last show that you had a few months ago, titled "Dear My Dead." It opened at ThinkSpace in March. So tell me a bit about the story around this work. I think from what I read a little bit, it was sort of intended to pay homage in a way to people who've passed in your life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I lost my grandpa and my grandma, and I think it was, the dates are getting all mixed in my head, but when I went to see my grandma's funeral, it was my first time seeing Korean funeral, and it was very shocking, and it was a really, I don't know how else to say, it was a wild experience for me, because when in Korea, when person gets cremated, they show the bone to family before they grind it.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was like such a wild experience. It was so sad, and it was very emotional, and it just made me thought of a lot of stuff that I never thought of before. And I I wasn't that close with my grandma. He was my grandma from my dad's side. So I guess I was more emotional in a way to experience the whole Korean funeral culture and like just how to say goodbye like is in different culture. It was something that, I never experienced before. So that was a big impact on me. And my grandpa on my mom's side is I was very close with my grandpa. So that was I didn't get to go to his funeral because it was like in middle of pandemic. But that was emotional in a different way because I was very close with my grandpa. So my last show was really just all that and some of my pets that I, passed on, the combination of everything. But yeah.
So is it the same kind of approach that we talked about earlier, taking some of these really hard feelings and just making them more approachable, a little bit more whimsical?
Yeah, it was, I think it was my way of grieving. Like, it was too hard to think about, my grandpa and my grandma sometimes. And I didn't want it to be too hard to think about them. And there was certain messages that I didn't get to tell them or, so through my painting, I think I was grieving and I was also healing at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I mean, I guess there's also just something beautiful about memorializing, loved ones in that way, helping their legacy, kind of carry on in your work. I guess, did you ever struggle with finding the right image to capture the feeling that you wanted to express?
For this show, I think it was more of a message. Like each painting, it was kind of like a letter to my grandpa or grandma. There was this painting that I did where the girl is holding up a tray with a bunch of food on top.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like it was all the food that my grandpa used to love. So it's kind of like my message or remembering my grandpa with all the food that he liked. So each piece had more like a memory or like a message to them. Yeah.
With Seesaw being your first, big body of work, were there any lessons that you learned from making that show that you then applied to this new body of work? Like just things that you wanted to do differently, or did you kind of approach it in the same way?
One thing I learned is wire before I start painting. That was such a big lesson for me.
Yeah.
For Seesaw, I wired all my panels after, and it was biggest mistake because I was so nervous that it would crack or something's gonna happen. Other than that, I think the approach was pretty similar. I tried to do small thumbnails of like overall pieces if I can early on to kind of see how they're gonna look all together and how they're gonna balance each other. So in that approach is very similar. Painting was very similar too, yeah.
So when you first started out working on the show, did you kind of develop the theme up front, the theme about, paying homage to folks in your life who have passed? Did you like come up with that idea first and then start working within that, like those boundaries? Or did you just start working and then realize, oh, wow, this is about like all of these people in my life? Like, how did you approach the overall theme for the show?
I think Seesaw was more of, I just started sketching and I did a couple of the main pieces that I really liked, and I was like, oh, okay, I see a theme here, and like I kind of tied it together. For Dear My Dad, it was the title or the theme first, and then I sketched.
Do you think that between those two ways of working, do you think you'll do it one way or the other in the future? Like, do you like one way more than the other?
I think having a clear theme or inspiration was helpful. So I think if, for my next show, I'll probably do the same approach where I'll probably think about what I want to talk about or I want to show and then branch out from there rather than, start painting.
So that's actually a really good segue. Let's talk about what you have coming up. What has been your main focus this year and what's the rest of 2024 look like for you?
The solo show ended and I can breathe now.
Right.
So it's great. Rest of the year, I think I might have a couple group show here and there, but other than that, painting side, it's gonna be pretty chill. I think I'm gonna do a lot of sketches. I want to do more sketches rather than paintings for this year, just to get more ideas and to filter out which one has potential to be paintings. And I'm also thinking about making a book on my own.
Nice.
Just the art, my collection of my art that I did so far. I never made a book before, so I was like, maybe it'll be a good challenge,
Are you working with anybody on that, like a publisher?
No.
Okay.
I think I'm gonna just do on my own. It's almost for me.
Sure.
I'm making it for me because I want to have like a small collection to see. But maybe I'll print like limited edition and maybe I can share it with folks.
Awesome.
For the animation side, I'm currently working on Bad Guys 2, and that's gonna premiere next August. So
nice. Very cool. Do you know when or do you have any plans for like when your next solo show might be, or is that too far out to even think about yet?
I think it's a little too far out.
Yeah. Fair. I mean, your last show just closed, so that's awesome. Anything else that you have coming up that you want to put on people's radars? Print releases, anything like that?
I'm planning on releasing sketches here and there throughout the year. Just small sketches, more affordable, and easy to hang. Yeah. Paintings are sometimes, it's hard. So I heard a lot of feedback that a lot of collectors like to get sketches and small drawings. So I'm thinking about doing that.
Awesome. And those will just be available on your website?
Yeah.
Very cool. So tell people where they can find you online in case they want to follow.
Oh, it's chayoungji.com.
Awesome. Very cool. So last question, and this is something that I like to ask everybody. Who is one artist that you'd like to see me have on the show?
Oh, Mark Ryden.
Okay. He's amazing. Quick aside, before I even got into like the art community back in the 90s, very early days of the internet, I would find his work. Wow. And I was so like obsessed with his work way before I got into like the gallery community or learned more about so that. Cool. So like he was my original obsession.
He's such a big inspiration for me. And have you seen pictures of his studio?
Yeah, incredible.
It's amazing.
It's like wall to wall, like just dolls and all kinds of amazing stuff.
That's a life goal right there for me as an artist, to have a studio like that. That's like he built his studio like his world, and I would love to hear what he has to say about all his art and inspiration. I feel like he'll be very fun to talk to.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, great suggestion. I really appreciate it. And Youngji, thank you so much for coming on and chatting with me today. This has been a lot of fun. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
So that's it for this episode of Art Affairs. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Youngji. It was interesting to talk with her about the dual nature of her career, how she dove so deeply into her original passion, animation, and then later, during the early days of the pandemic, she dipped her toes back in the water of her personal creative practice. And now, years later, it's become a regular part of her life again. But since her personal art doesn't have that burden of funding her life, she's able to integrate it into her life in a more enjoyable and fulfilling way. She doesn't have to stress out about constantly grinding to pay the bills, and can always come to her personal work from a creative and introspective place. And I guess that leads into another thing that really resonated with me, how she described her art as a, sort of mechanism for mourning and healing, creative expression as therapy. And I totally see that in her work, reflecting on these really heavy and dark themes while presenting them in a very cute and whimsical way, effectively defanging those feelings and making them more digestible, reclaiming that power. Be sure to follow her Instagram to see when she puts up new drawings throughout the year. I'm definitely going to be keeping an eye out for those. So thanks again to Youngji for joining me today, and thank you for checking out the show. I'm truly grateful for your support. And just a reminder, one big way you could help out if you're really enjoying the show would be to check out the show's Patreon. You can find all the details at patreon.com/artaffairs. And as always, you can contact me through my website at artaffairs.podcast.com or on Instagram at artaffairs.podcast. So until next time, be good to yourself and be good to each other.